Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another phase. By the end of this phase, you will put the Belfort boys to shame. You know those schmucks who are able to take any random civilian and by the end have them investing their life savings into penny stocks. That is nothing compared to what you're going to learn in this phase. Not really. In this phase, I'm going to teach you agency-specific sales, and this is coming from someone with 5 years of experience, someone who has done it all. The face-to-face, in-person meetings with local clients, all the way to the very hard, stringent one call close script with this psychological trick and this psychological trick, and you can't veer off the script, and it literally feels like you're not even fucking talking to a human. I've done it all, and I've really, really refined the process over the space of the last, as I said, 5 years. And what you are gonna get here today is the best sales training out there, specific for agency owners that are dealing with other business owners, real humans. And at the end of this phase, I'm actually going to give you a module from CPA. In there, we've got something called the Vault, which is like 15 hours of over-the-shoulder footage, literally from like the demo call with Danny, sales call with me, all the way to onboarding call, and then also a breakdown, over-the-shoulder ad walkthrough of how we got all those clients the results. There's clients in there that we're literally doing $1.5 million return on ad spend for. So with all of that being said, let's get into phase 5. So, the cardinal sins of sales. Now, in today's teaching, we are going to go over the insanity surrounding sales, understanding what not to do in order to perfect sales. Cardinal sin 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, let's talk about sales in the agency world. Sales is so grossly misunderstood for many reasons. First things first is the stereotype in movies and like just in general, this stereotype or this image of a salesperson that presses very hard. And in fact, there's a lot of sales trainers out there that teach that form of sales. Here's the issue. That can work, right? The thing is, if you pressure sell me into even buying a watch, right? Or you use some sort of sales tactics, at the end of the day, I will say someone, for example, who deals with watches, and do, let's say a salesperson at Patek Philippe or Richard Mille, that's probably not the wisest move, because then if someone has, buyer's remorse, then they probably won't come back to you. But let's be honest, let's say someone like a car salesman or just a salesman for a one-time product, right? If they sort of pressure sell or use some tactics, there's no issues, right? Because that's product-based sales, right? Same thing with, I'll be honest, a lot of people out there when it comes to courses and programs, they can use sort of pressure tactics or these like gimmicky stuff, right? And at the end of the day, that's fine, because someone will purchase and then, maybe they might regret their purchase 2 months later, but whatever, it's a product, right? With service-based sales, it's kind of like SaaS companies, right? You can't really fuck around. You need to understand there's a big, big difference between product-based sales and service-based sales. So you can jump through as many hoops as you want. You can use as many little sly sales tactics and tricks and whatnot, and that might work. But after the first month, what do you think is going to happen? The client's going to go, oh, wow, actually, I really didn't want to do this. And I really wasn't sold until, this trick was used and this trick was used. And the thing is, in service-based sales, look, as much as, as solid of a contract as we have, at the end of the day, they can call their credit card company anytime they want and just go block this payment. And that's the thing you need to understand in service-based sales, right? Is we're providing a service, and we're forming a partnership with these clients. So they need to be bought in. And, this is stuff I'll be talking about in detail going forward. But this is really the big thing that you really need to internalize before we move on to the rest of this phase, is there's a big difference between product-based sales and service-based sales. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you, apologies if this is a little bit crass, but I'll just give you a very honest example. Product-based sales is like sleeping with someone, right? At the end of the day, a guy can convince a girl for one night that he's, used some sort of tricks and tactics to make himself seem, more commanding or more confident or this or, whatever way he wants to present himself. But at the end of the day, a lot of guys who can sleep with a lot of women, they can't get really high quality girls into relationships. And by the way, also vice versa, for girls and guys, because at the end of the day, a relationship is a long-term thing. And, product-based sales is like, okay, I can do some, I can be a dancing monkey, or I can try this little trick or tactic, and, it might work. And as I said, for product-based sales, that works a lot of the time. Whereas in service-based sales, you can do that, but then very quickly, because it's an ongoing thing, someone will realize, hey, this person or this person's service is not what I thought they were, right? So that's why when it comes to objection handling, this is the funniest thing when I see so many people are like, when so many people are so fixated on how do I handle objections when it comes to agency-based sales. And it's like, for me, I'll maybe handle one, maybe two objections, but if a person is still ruminating on all the reasons it can't work, and by the way, we're going to get into this later down the line, there's a big difference between objection handling and logistics handling, right? Logistics handling is, hey, there's this impediment. How do we make this work? Objection handling is, I'm not bought in. Tell me why I should be bought in, right? Logistics handling, I'll handle all day. As many issues that we need to iron out, because that's someone who has an intention to move forward. Logistics handling is they're not interested. They don't see the value. And the thing is, there is no point if in that point in time, they don't see the value. There's no point, doing objection handling after objection handling after objection handling, because a month later, they're just going to fall back to the same opinion they had of the service, and they're just going to fall back into those same objections. The other thing you need to understand is that product-based sales is mainly about price and features, okay? How much does it cost, and what features do I get from it, okay? Maybe it costs more, but maybe I get better features. Usually, that's the way the product-based sales works. Unless we're talking, ultra high-end, where, when you get into luxury market, it's not really about that anymore. When it comes to service-based sales, it's about quality, right? You need to understand that people, when they're going to a specialist doctor, or when they're going to a specialist therapist, right? Or they're going to anyone who's a specialist, in the same way our agency is positioned. We are a specialist with our niche. They don't look at price anymore. It's a factor, but the main thing that they're looking at is quality, because they understand that it is 100x difference between one service-based business and the other when it comes to the care, attention, and also results that you're going to get. So next thought that I want to leave you with is, with service-based sales, we have to be very honest about whether we can do what we say we can do, right? And if we're still 50-50, then we also have to be honest about that. It's so funny. One of my best sales tactics, and anyone who's in CPA and has seen the 15 hours of breakdowns that I've done, and you've seen me absolutely kill sales calls, out of like 12 case studies. You see me close clients like that, and then you see me when I'm a little shaky, and I've literally shown that on purpose so that way you can see what it's like when I'm not on point, right? When maybe I've just come back from a trip, I'm feeling a little tired, a little sleepy, or just maybe I've just been a little stale. Maybe that month we haven't had many sales calls, so I'm just feeling a little rusty. And I've shown you ones, as I said, where I'm very on point, and I've shown you ones where also I tell the client, my favorite sales tactic is just telling the client why I hold the position that I do, and just being very honest and just being like, hey, I'm 50-50 on this for this reason. And I think, I have 70% certainty that we can get you results, but I also have 30% certainty that, it may not happen. Now, my agency, that's fine because the guarantees that we have. But as I talked about in the pricing modules, that's not something I recommend when you first start out. So the reason I say that is because being honest with your intentions for me has been one of the best sales tactics, right? So we're going to go through all of this in this phase. And as I said, in terms of agency specific stuff, you're going to get the best agency specific sales training out there. What to say in a 1-call close, how to position a 2-call close, how to position paid trials. We're going to get into all this. Every single scenario you can imagine, we're going to get into it. And then we're going to show you actual real life footage of this stuff. But before we do all of that, the best place to start is to talk about what not to do. And that's really what this module is about. It's the cardinal sins of sales that you need to avoid at all costs. So cardinal sin number one. Is to think that you have a sales problem when 99% of the time, you just have a prospecting problem. You see, sales is glitz and glam, but you need to understand that 70% of the time when a prospect gets on the call with you, their decision is already made. When it comes to sales, really, it's three things. Is the client bought into the service? Is this the right time for their business? And then lastly, if those two are on point, right? They understand the service and they understand that this is the right move forward for their business, and they also have the drive to move forward with this right now. Because here's the thing, right? There's so many things I know I should be doing in both of my businesses that I said I know I should be doing, but I just don't have the time. Logistically, it just doesn't make sense right now, or I just have a lot on my plate, and I don't have that burning desire to move forward with it. Right. So, let's say someone came in, we don't really use service providers anymore. Like for the past 2 years, my entire team has been fully in-house. We don't even use contractors. Let's say someone came to me and they're like, look, I will do this for you. I want to be full-time with you. This is a role that you don't currently have, but you need for this, and this reason. And they could be a 10 out of 10 fit because I just have a lot on my plate right now. It's just not going to happen. So you need to understand that these two need to be in place. As I said, for me, majority of sales is just meeting a prospect who's in the right headspace to move forward and is motivated to move forward. And in order to do that, you need volume. Then the other 30-40% is, hey, we're bought into you specifically. And as I said, without these two things, without them being bought into the service that you're doing, because as I said, there's also parts of my business where right now, I don't think that's the right thing for my business, or I don't think that I need that role, right? You need to understand with your service, for certain clients, they're like, oh, let's say you're doing email marketing, for e-commerce business. They're like, oh, I don't need that, right? So no matter how good your sales are, if they haven't made that switch yet, and this is, in all fairness, this is something that you can do on that sales call, or more importantly, as I said, once, kind of going back to my point, this is something that you can do through your prospecting, the way that you educate them before that call, or the way that you at least spark some sort of excitement around it before that call. You have a sales problem when 99% of the time, it really is just a prospecting problem. And the last thing I want to mention is the velocity of meeting is very important. Let's say I would rather have 4 meetings in 1 month and then not have any meetings for the following 3 months than have, 4 meetings spread out over 4 months, right? I mean, either way, that's ridiculously low volume, but just as an example. Because each meeting is really just a stepping stone, and psychologically, it does a lot for you as well, right? You need to understand that when you have low volume of meetings, it really, you put too much pressure and too much emphasis on that meeting. And as I said, a large portion of sales is just being very honest as to whether this is a good fit or not, right? And, let's bring this back into the dating world. If you're not having, sufficient dates, you might meet someone who probably isn't the best fit for you because you're like, oh, I haven't met someone in a while. Like, you just get too attached, right? And when something like that happens, it always ends up badly, right? You always need to come and you need to build a partnership from a place of abundance. So just remember, if you're having some issues and you feel as though your sales isn't on point, 99% of the time, it is a prospecting problem, not a sales problem. So ladies and gentlemen, this printout is available right below this video. Moving on to cardinal sin number 2. The next sin is never copy the script word for word. I thought this was self-explanatory, but people in Agency Incubator, the last variation of this program, just literally took and just word for word copied things, right? The way that I've structured the sales script inside of Agency Navigator, there's one for a 1-call close and there's one for a 2-call close, whatever you use, right? And there's a lot of room for variation in there. And the other thing is, with the way that we have the plug and play structured, you're not going to be able to copy paste. So it's funny, in all fairness, you can literally just copy the script because you could have the plug and play open by a Google Doc and you could copy over. But even that, I just wanted to add a bit of friction because I want you to use that the script, the 1-call close script and the 2-call close script, really as a rudder, but then personalize it to your own tone. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very specific style of sales. I'm a very sort of logic-based salesperson, and I'm a very a lot of the things I do are very subtle, right? I never, a lot of my clients, a lot of times they'll tell me like, it feels like, I wasn't even in a sales situation. Like, it felt like we were having a conversation, and that's my personal style. And that's a style that fits me. But then there's other people who are a lot more sort of brash, but that actually works for them, right? So who am I to judge their sales style? So you need to use whatever sales style works for you. And I also have very specific phrases and words that I say. It's funny because a lot of my students will be like, dude, like all of the other people who have agency education programs, like they use your same words. Like it's weird. Like it's just freaky, right? And I'm like, yeah. And that's probably not going to work too well for them, right? Because as I said, when I say certain stuff, like it has a certain ring to it, or it's just punchy because that's just, it's my, it's my lexicon. I have a very large lexicon, and I mean that both in here and then actually, written down. Whenever I find a word that I like and it just rolls off the tongue for me, I write it down and I add that into my vocabulary. And same thing with certain phrases, right? So the biggest mistake you can make is take that 1-call close or that 2-call close sales script and just go, just copy paste it, right? Because first of all, that's just not an effective method in terms of copying people, right? Because the thing is, you need to understand in our market, and I don't know if I can't remember if I've mentioned this other times in the program, but you need to understand in our market, this is not 2017, this is not 2018. I guarantee you're not the first agency they've spoken to. So if you sound like all the other agencies, they're just going to roll their eyes and be like, all right, fuck this, right? You don't want to sound like the other agencies. You don't want to look like the other agencies, right? Now, at the end of the day, there's only so much variation we can have. And this is the other, like, it's funny how like, these two, people always go to extremes. They're like, okay, let me be like copy paste like every single other person, and then The other extreme is like, let me be so different that it's just like, it's unnecessary. The client doesn't actually understand what you do. And it's just like, you're trying to add differentiation, but there's no real differentiation there. You need to understand, look, as agencies, there's not, once again, like a doctor is not being like, I need to be this specific thing and I need to have this specific angle, right? A doctor's just like, well, I'm better than the other doctor and I can prove it. And if you're not, you put one foot forward in front of the other, right? And that's really what having an agency is. And that's why, as I said, I've never seen it where a person makes less money in year 2 than they do in year 1, or makes less money in year 5 than they do in year 3. Whereas in other businesses, affiliate marketing, e-commerce, I mean, the biggest one is education companies. I know the top guys in every single one of those industries. I'm friends with all of them. All of their businesses do worse in year 5 than they do in year 3. And as I said, that comes down to the fact that we have a service-based business and people are paying for quality. Okay. So you don't need to go, the reason I say all this is because you don't need to go too extreme when it comes to differentiation. But when it comes to your sales script, just don't sound like every other person. I'll give you a perfect example, right? One of my favorite phrases that I would always mention in my sales, well, they weren't really sales calls, they were sales meetings back in 2017 when I used to do everything face-to-face, was you're leaving money on the table. Because it's very visceral. Like you can imagine it, right? Like it's almost like that money is on that table there while I'm speaking with this prospect. And, for me, that worked perfectly. That rolled off the tongue. It was a phrase that I liked. But here's the issue. When I mentioned that in a video, or in, the two variations ago, 6-figure SMA, the OG program, the issue is people, when I say stuff, they take it as gospel, right? They don't go, okay, I need to change this up, or I need to find something that works better for me. And then now, if you tell an agency, if you tell a client, you're leaving money on the table, they're like,
oh no, it's one of these dickheads. Oh,
right? So you just want to make sure you don't sound like every other agency out there. So when I give you that sales script, of course, there's certain bits where it's like you're not gonna sound like every other agency if you're like, oh, so where's the monthly revenue at, right? Like there's certain stuff where that's just very bog standard basic, right? But some of the ones that are a little bit more expressive and are a little bit more unique to me, find your own groove, find your own rhythm. So that's pretty much all I have to say for this cardinal sin. So this printout is available right below this video. Moving on to cardinal sin number 3. Cardinal sin number 3 is a very simple one, but one that a lot of people get very, very wrong. And that's don't be lame. You can smell an agency owner from a mile away with the way that they conduct themselves. And this sort of feeds into one of the other cardinal sins we'll talk about in just a second. But really all I can say is, the best of your abilities, try to leave the markety/sales jargon at the door. Just think of it as you're having a conversation from one business owner to the other business owner. And by the way, that's actually something that I used to say a lot in 2017, but don't say that. Don't be like, oh, just from one business owner to the other business owner, right? Like anything that just sounds like it's inauthentic. I guess the biggest thing is don't be inauthentic. Try to be as authentic as you possibly can. Let me give you an example. If you don't have for example, like at my agency, like we genuinely have a maximum capacity. We worked very hard over the space of the last 3 years to take our maximum capacity from 8 to where it is now at 20, right? And we brought on multiple more performance marketers in order to accommodate that. So with us, if it gets to a situation where we're at like 20 and we have a client that wants to join, like I have to think like, am I willing to bring this person on and reduce quality for our other clients? But if you're at a stage right now where you don't have any clients, don't talk to clients about how selective you are when you're not, right? Let's be entirely honest, right? You kind of take on any client at this point. And you'd think that kind of, and by the way, you don't need to tell the client like, hey, look, like, heads up, I would take on any client right now. You just don't mention it, right? Like, and as I said, that authenticity, it just shines through. And by the way, I fell trapped to this in 2018. I used it all the time. And even towards the end of 2017, don't use like scarcity or incentive-based pricing if you're not going to stay true to it, right? If you're going to tell the client, hey, it's $1,500 today, and if you make a decision in 7 days, it's $2,000 per month, stick to it, right? Because then you're just every other fly-by-night salesman. Even just the way that you describe your agency, you'll notice every agency goes, we help this niche by doing this, accomplish that. Like it's just, we don't really have any like catchphrase or anything at IG Media. Like the main sort of thing that we did is I've always thought like, I started having this thought like kind of mid 2018, like fuck, like it's so cool. Like we're just like these internet nerds basically printing money for our clients, especially because most of our clients back then were info product businesses. So it really is printing money for your clients. So I kind of always latched onto this idea of alchemy. And that's something when I revamped the website right at the beginning of 2020, we latched onto this idea of alchemy and we talk about it in case study and this and that. So with us, we kind of have like a bit of an identity. Find what yours is, right? Find what yours is. But as I said, just, you can almost compare it to like a Volvo. You can say as predictably as your Volvo turns on, or like as predictably as a Volvo runs, right? Like you can almost position yourself as like, look, what we do is not exciting or there's no special magic to it, but we just get it done, right? So whatever you do, as I said, you just don't want to sound like every other agency in your sales encounter, and you also just don't want to position yourself. And really, let me reinstate this. That doesn't mean that your offer has to be any different. It's just the way that you conduct yourself, right? And by the way, it could even just be in terms of little quirks within the way that you deal with clients, right? Like maybe you've just got special, unique things that make your agency tick, certain special hobbies. And I'm just throwing out some ideas here. Maybe, especially if you work with some younger clients, maybe e-commerce clients and stuff like that, maybe you've got a thing where once a month, you and all of your clients hop on Warzone, or I'm a grandpa, so I don't know what the cool kids play these days, right? Call of Duty or Warzone or something like that. Or maybe Warzone is Call of, I don't know. Tristan, help me out here. or what's the other one? Fortnite? I think that's it. Yeah. Point is, like maybe that's your thing, your spiel. Once a month you hop on a thing with all your clients. Like these are just all sort of like unique things. Like any of my clients that let's say I'm traveling, I'm in their city. A lot of times we'll go and we'll get cigars, or we'll talk about watches. Like a lot of times I actually have my clients on WhatsApp. Like my clients never message me anything business related on WhatsApp. But I have my clients and we talk about like watches, and I'll send new watch releases to them, and then they'll send new watch releases to me. Now, as I said, in terms of your sales process, this doesn't change your sales script or anything like that. But as I said, it's just the way, I guess the biggest thing I want to say is just think about your ecosystem and how coming into your ecosystem, it will feel like a fresher breath there compared to everything else that's out there. So this is available for printout. And it's so funny how many people just get this wrong. And this can be in pretty much every industry I've seen, to be honest. So yeah, you'll be so ahead of your competition if you just don't be lame. Cardinal sin number 4. The next cardinal sin, and that kind of ties into the last one, is never be insincere, right? So always just be honest with your intentions. And I think us as agency owners, sometimes we don't give our clients enough credit. Like we think, we think our clients have never heard this before or have never been reached out before. You need to understand, as I said, in our current climate, prospects have been reached out before. They probably hopped on calls with other, lame agencies before, right? They just tried to use a cookie cutter script and just treat them like any other person and not get to know them or their business. And, for that reason, a big thing that I see is just be honest and sincere as to like what you like about their brand. And if there's nothing special that you like about it, for me, just don't say it. Like, as I said, this doesn't mean that you need to only sign clients that you're passionate about or this, that. Because some of my clients, like, honestly, they're just like, I understand the mechanics of their business, but I don't really understand their business, or it doesn't really like excite me. But then some clients that we have, I'm like, holy shit, this is like the coolest thing ever. Oh, by the way, this and this and this. And I actually have a product that's really similar to it. Or it's funny, I've even had clients of mine that like, I know my mom would love that product and I mentioned that. And it's just like very, as I said, it's just very sincere. And if there's a client where like, I can't use their product, or I don't really vibe with it, but I love the business, or I understand the mechanics of the business and the business is very promising, then I just won't mention it, right? Because for me to say it would be just very insincere. Okay, so be honest with your intentions. And then more importantly as well, just be very sincere with what you like about their business, what you don't like about their business. And as I said, if there is nothing that you particularly like about the business, just don't say it. Like, it's very powerful, some of the stuff. Like, it's funny because we think that, if we give them a insincere compliment, right? Or a compliment that maybe we don't necessarily mean. We think, okay, it can't do any harm. It will, because they'll be able to see through it. We think that, hey, if we say something like incentive-based pricing, and we don't stick with it, like we think, there's no harm in saying it. Well, as I said, if they know, if they can see, these clients are smarter than you think. They can see it in your eyes whether you mean it, right? They can see in your eyes whether there's an empty threat. They can sense it in your tonality, okay? So with that being said, it's not a situation where like, I'll do it and there's no downside. It's like, no, you will shoot yourself in the foot if you give an insincere compliment. And there's actually, as I said, if there's actually nothing you like about their business, or you will shoot yourself in the foot if you give them incentive-based pricing, but they know you're not going to actually hold them to it. So as I said, there's a lot of power in just not, like, if you don't mean something, just don't say it, and it will never hurt you, right? Whereas on the other hand, if you say something and you don't mean it, it will actually take you 2 steps backwards. Another thing that's really awesome about being sincere about your intentions is just really stops you from, signing the wrong clients. So ladies and gentlemen, be honest with your intentions and give clients more credit. They're smarter than you think. Cardinal sin number 5. The fifth and final cardinal sin is so important and is also going to put you at ease so much because you see, most of you guys go in and you think, hey, what's going to happen if I go in and they don't close because they don't say yes? When instead you should be thinking, what'll happen if I go in and they don't close because I don't say yes? Just going into the call with the mentality that they may not be the ideal prospect. Like, look, I am here for you, right? I'm your mentor. I don't take this lightly, and I will be very honest with you, right? And I mean, I've been very honest with you thus far, and I'll call you out on your mental bullshit, right? And I'll call you out on like, hey, like it's not all roses and fairy dust and this and that. But this is one of those where like I'm not, I'm really not trying to hype you up and being like, oh, what if you don't say yes, right? Like, what if they're not able to close you? That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is just take a deep breath, have less anxiety going into the call, because as I said, why have so much anxiety and like stress about the sales call when you might get on and you might go, actually, you know what, they're not a good fit, right? And that's the biggest thing you need to understand is you should not be making an offer to every prospect. In fact, when you first start your agency, you probably shouldn't be making a offer to 50% of prospects, right? You should only, like when you get on a sales call, you should only be making an offer to 50% of prospects. And then also that changes the law when it comes to your closing percentage, because, it doesn't matter what your closing percentage is. It matters what's your closing percentage in accordance to the amount of offers that you made. Because, if you've had some tough luck with prospecting, you just haven't gotten the right sort of prospects on the phone with you, then, it's a poor reflection, and it's also like a poor understanding of your sales skills if then you're like, oh, my closing percentage is only 10%. And out of all of those prospects that have got on, let's say you had 10 sales calls and only one client closed. Let's say out of those 10 prospects that you had on a sales call, you only made an offer to 4 because the other 6 were just not at the right stage in their business, or it just wasn't a right fit, or maybe the niche was just kind of worked for you but kind of didn't. So you only made an offer to 4 prospects and then one said yes. That's the difference between a 25% closing rate, which is very healthy, and a 10% closing rate, which you feel terrible about and you think you're a terrible salesperson and this and that, when it wasn't a sales issue, it was a prospecting issue. Even at my stage, we get around, on average, anywhere from 20 to 30, sometimes 35, but usually around 25 demos per month, right? And that's 15-minute demos that Danny speaks to. From there, he'll only book in 8 to 10 discovery calls. For me, some months I close 1, some months I close 4. It kind of swings, right? It's never really consistent. But if you take it over the space of a year, we usually bring on 2 new clients a month. So if I'm speaking to 8 to 10 prospects on a discovery call, my closing percentage is only 20 to 25%. Now, it could be way higher than that, but in my agency, because we have such a specific client avatar and because of the way that we construct our deals, I have to be very picky, right? And then if you look at the amount of demos that we've had, right? 25 demos, and we only bring on average 2 clients a month. Technically, that's a horrible conversion rate. But as I said, myself and my team know that we should not be making an offer to everyone. And I only look at what is my closing percentage of people that I make offers to. And if I look at that, my closing percentage is like 80%, right? But bear in mind, this has been such a big filtration process that by the time, if I make an offer, it really is because it's a no-brainer for myself and it's a no-brainer for the client. So look, as I said, really just to put your mind at ease, especially when you're first starting, you should only be making an offer to probably 50% of prospects. Okay, so understand that if you have 8 sales calls a month, understand that you'll only probably 4 of those will be prospects that you can actually make an offer to. And that's okay. That's part of the process. So ladies and gentlemen, this is available for a download right below. You shouldn't make an offer to everyone. So today's action step is just go ahead and skim through the group and just give some words of encouragement to the GYA community. Anyone's win, anyone's sort of general post, anyone's welcome post. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm probably the biggest thing I'm proud of with Gradiency, of course, is the Sturm results and this and that. But just as well, how many actual real life in-person friendships have come from the Gradiency community. So ladies and gents, that is pretty much about it for today's module. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one.